What's up? I'm Justin, and welcome to the Talking Pixels podcast, helping you take your photography from a hobby to a career. I'm super excited to welcome today's guest, Zabrina Deng of JeZa Photography. Zabrina is a California-based photographer who has traveled the world photographing weddings, engagements, and portraits, and is considered one of the top 50 destination wedding photographers. On top of that, she's also a Sony Artisan of Imagery, as well as a WPPI master photographer. And with a resume like that, I cannot wait to jump into today's episode and find out more about her business. So thank you very much for joining me today, Zabrina. How's it going?
Hey, what's up, Justin? So nice to be here. I'm super excited. And I just want to say hello from San Francisco Bay Area. We just hit the spring weather here.
Yeah.
And it's like really nice. And I'm super excited to share this moment with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for joining me and taking time out of your schedule. I'm super jealous of your spring weather in the Bay Area versus my spring weather here in Ohio. We haven't quite hit our rainy season yet, but that's next on the list before we get to our warm season. So I'm super jealous of your weather out there in California. But I know that you and I have, we've been talking a little bit in leading up to this episode and trying to give you some more information about what we really do here on the Talking Pixels podcast, what our purpose is. And for listeners who may just be tuning into this episode for the first time, the goal of this podcast is to help photographers take their photography from hobby to a career. And as I previously mentioned, you've created quite a photography career for yourself, and I cannot wait to find out more about it. So do you mind if we jump right into some questions here?
Yes, sure.
All right, cool. All right. So I want to say, first of all, I came across your page, and I think it was actually watching a class or something online, and that you were, or maybe it was more of like a networking kind of thing online, but you were in it. And so you started talking at one point, and I was like, oh, I have to go check out her images. And I went to your Instagram page, and I was like, oh my gosh, these photos you're creating, not only are you in these amazing locations, but you're creating these beautiful images with couples. So I wouldn't be surprised if people look at your work and think, wow, I don't know that I could ever create something as beautiful as this. But like everyone else, you had to start somewhere, right? So how did your interest in photography, and specifically wedding photography, begin? And what was it like starting out in the wedding photography industry for you?
Yeah, so first of all, we all started somewhere, and in the very beginning of my photography journey, and I started taking like classes at a community college. All the pictures I took, it was just like flowers, pets, like things I found in the farmer's market, some landscape photo. It's just all kinds of random everyday life things and moments. And then until my friends started to get married, and then I take pictures for them just for like a practice run for my class assignment. And I think, I've always have an interest in, like looking at like fashion magazines and fashion blogs and like anything like related to like clothes, designer, that kind of like the design genre on TV. I would just look them up, and because that's always been my interest, like clothes and fashion. And I think the turning point of like kind of like switching from my hobby to become like taking that hobby to be more serious hobby is that at the moment that I found Scott Robert Lim's blog. Yeah, so Scott Robert, he's my mentor, and then but before we become like a mentor and mentee relationship, and he was like a long time writer on something called a Zanga blog. I don't know if you know what it is.
Yeah.
It's like pre MySpace. Yeah, so it's like but I was on Zanga quite a bit, and during my like 9 to 5 work, like lunch hour or break time, I would just like read on Zanga what's happening. And then Scott was one of the like most popular writer on Zanga, and then he had like and he always like blog about photography, like he's like, you know, like his trips to Paris or his trips to Asia, Korea, where everywhere that he has been. And but there's this one time he was asking for someone to help him find models, also like a translator for, like he's putting together a workshop in China.
Okay.
So I jumped in that chance to, you know, I wrote to Scott, I'm like, Scott, I'm your longtime Zanga fans, and I have connections, and I can help you maybe talk to my dad's friends, and they'll have like models for your workshop, and then I can read and write in Chinese too, so I can help you to translate. Can you use a translator for your workshop, and maybe I come along to help you just with your workshop? And he said, oh yeah, come. And then basically that's like, you know, that's my very first professional photography training. It was attending Scott's workshop in China and being his translator. Yeah, so that was like a huge turning point, because before then I was only, you know, taking picture random things and like maybe some portrait, like random portrait of my friends. I have never shot a model or like someone like being very put together, like very stylized, like a fashion style portraits. And then being at Scott's workshop, we were able to get a lot of professional models for his workshop, and then like these models were highly stylized with like different designer or clothes. And Scott also brought some of the wardrobe himself too for the workshop. So, and it was my very first time and seeing this whole process and how that like put together, like the model involved with hair and makeup, and then like changing clothes throughout the shoot. And then I was also involved, like, you know, I got a little bit of a chance to take pictures, but mostly just doing like other things, like, you know, holding lights or like translating. But I got a taste of what it would be like to be a fashion photographer, pretending to be a fashion photographer, I guess, you know, and
learning,
yes, yeah, learning to be one, exactly. And but I was like so like freaking out, because like it's my first time actually like holding a somewhat decent camera too. I was shooting with a Nikon D40. It's like a Rebel, you know, like a very entry level, exactly, with the kit lens. But I think at the workshop I started using maybe just one step a little bit better with the prime lens, and then so and then the image quality was like so much better from like back then using a kit lens and a entry level DSLR. So from the workshop, and I was totally like, you know, hooked with this idea. Maybe one day I could be like Scott, that travel around the world and take pictures for these like really like highly fashionable models. Yeah, so I think that really planted an idea in my head. And after that workshop, it was like, I think 12 years ago or 11 years. Yeah, it was a long time. And then and after I got back to my 9 to 5 everyday job, I work as a system programmer for a consulting company. I just couldn't stop thinking about, you know, maybe this is my new destiny. Maybe this is my new life, that I can do something different other than demanding like everyday 9 to 5 number crunching kind of work. Yeah. So that was really like the turning point for my career. And I didn't have like, you know, a lot of photographers, they probably have a lot of things like planned out, which is really great for them. And I you know, I feel like if, you know, if I can go back in time, I wish I have a little bit more time to plan things out, say like save up a bit more to invest it in like more gears, and perhaps to like establish like a like financially maybe more established before I really jump into the bandwagon. But also maybe it was because of being so stupid that, you know, not having too much plan, I went all in. Like it's like a show hand for like, you know, gambling. It's like all in or nothing. So being all in, I just gave up I just like, you know, okay, turn in 2 weeks notice, and then, okay, that's it. I'm just doing this full time. I just couldn't stand just being at that job, you know, with the mandate. It's like very robotic. So I just have to like, you know, make this thing work. Otherwise, you know, I couldn't give up my job for nothing. So that's kind of like a mentality.
Definitely.
Going in this thing full time.
It's a big jump to make. I mean, I took that jump back last August into going full time with my
Oh my
photography.
gosh.
Yeah, and it was such, it's a stressful decision to make. But it's very interesting to hear your kind of, now, were you living in China at the time when Scott did his workshop there, or did you
Oh,
travel with him to China for
yes,
that?
yeah. So I was already living in the States. So I moved to the state when I was a teenager. So I know about Scott's blog when I was I think 7 or 8 years into like working full time. Yeah,
Okay.
in the States. So sorry. Track back to a little bit of my background. I was born and raised in China, but I
Okay.
moved to the state when I was like a teenager. So I went to high school, college, and then I started working in for a consulting company for about 8 years, and then become a full-time photographer.
Right.
So I've been a full-time photographer for 12 years by now. Yeah,
Okay.
12. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge step to. I mean, I also have shared Scott as a mentor myself. I started working with him last year, and he was also instrumental in helping me get to that next level of being able to go full time too. I did not get to do one of his like workshops where they travel. I mean, he does them all over the place, like Cuba, China, Paris. I mean, he goes all over the place, and I've not got to do one of those yet. Although those seem incredible, and what an experience it must be to go out to these locations and photograph in them with stylized outfits and models, and it just all comes together. And no wonder people end up with these amazing portfolio images out of it. But that's definitely a huge step to take, especially as somebody who's just kind of experimenting with photography at that time, while, obviously wanting to learn more, and you're following Scott's blog and reading, about the industry. But I have to imagine that hands-on and personal experience with having a mentor like Scott, in that situation is almost invaluable, right? You're coming into a place where you're working with a professional who is traveling across the globe doing photography and photographing these incredible weddings, and you're getting to work one-on-one with him. Well, essentially one-on-one. I know those are small groups, but there's a lot of one-on-one time, I'd assume, and learning directly from him. So, how did you feel coming out of that? What was your, we have it's recurring on this podcast where we talk to people and mentorship comes up. And up until I started a mentorship program with Scott, I did not even realize how important mentorship is in photography. But almost every successful photographer that we've talked to explains how important mentorship was to them. So when you left that workshop from Scott, what was your next thought? I mean, what were you thinking? How were you going to, I know you said you didn't have a real game plan going into it, but obviously you've made it work really well for yourself to be considered one of the top destination wedding photographers, and winning tons of awards for your work. So, and becoming a Sony Artisan as well. So what was your next step after you came out of that workshop and deciding, okay, now I'm going to go full time into this? Was it just straight into weddings then?
Actually, that's a great question. Now that I thought about it, it's not like, okay, after like coming back from Scott's workshop, I went like straight to full time. It's not that. I think it took about like 8 months to a year for the transition. But I think right after we came back from Scott's workshop, because we left around the same time from China and back to the States. And then I wrote him an email. I'm like, Scott, whenever you have a shoot in the Bay Area, can I assist your shoot as much as I could? I want to be your free labor, or like, whatever you need me to do. I just want to spend time to learn from you. And like, because I already spent a lot to go to China, and I didn't want to spend some more because of me being so Asian and try to like figure out math. And then so I'm like, is there a way like maybe I just help you to plan your next workshop so I can pick your brains on your like non-working moments. So I just one of those things is just like it's like a very intentional to make myself available to help him out, and as much as and then I can get like pick like his knowledge and pick his brain. And then so I think the next couple years, I also helped Scott to like organize some of his local workshops in the Bay Area and some in LA. And while doing that, I've learned a lot actually. So just, even by organizing, and I get to shoot a little bit during the workshop setting, and then just to see how like, his creative process work and what his like, like what is going through in his mind. And I got to listen to his like off-camera flash lecture like over maybe like 100 times already. So that really like sets a great foundation for my skill set, and like assisting, holding a light for him, and also like planning like the workshop. That gives me really good like when I try to figure out logistics for my own shoot, I know exactly what to do. So I think, just assisting, and then also like, being with my mentor and just like conversation, just endless conversation about everything. It's just not just photography. Sometimes we just talk about like life, like just, it's some really deep stuff. It's just, and movies too. Like it's really, really fascinating, just to be like part of his group and his community. And I feel like that's my kind of like my second family, away from home. I highly encourage, like, you kind of have to like figure out a way to like for all the new photographers want to, be better at this, and kind of like figure out a community where you can be part of, and then find a mentor where, intentionally that you can just offer some of your skill to exchange knowledge. Yeah. So I think that's the best way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to attest to that too, that it's been it's been hugely beneficial to me to learn. And I think the biggest part is that you're learning, you're almost bypassing a lot of the mistakes that you will make as a, beginning into photography, or as a somewhat novice when you're working with somebody who's been doing this for years, because they've already kind of ironed out all that. And give you, I don't want to say necessarily give you a game plan for it, but it helps you get a better understanding of what you need to do and how to get to that next step quicker, because you're watching them do it on a consistent basis. And, and I think, a lot of my experience that I had when I studied, photography at a university, and I learned enough there, I felt like, but I learned way more when I started working in studios and with photographers who've been doing it for years. My initial job I took out of college was working in a portrait studio with two master photographers from PPA. And I learned so much just from working there for a couple years on the business side, and how, light, I mean, compared to my classes at school, on a daily basis, we're taking portraits and doing weddings on weekends, and doing like sports teams and stuff like that. And I'm learning so much more about lighting from it, because I'm seeing it on a regular basis and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And so I think that what a lot of people, and especially younger people now, and I guess older people as well, who are still wanting to do photography, you gain a lot of people are gaining information from sources like YouTube, or some classes and workshops online, I guess, too, like master classes and stuff. But I really think that I have gained the most out of, like you said, being a part of those shoots, and giving my time, whether it was paid or unpaid, to learn from those people, or in some cases, even paying for mentorship, because it's almost invaluable what you get out of it. If you can take what you learn from those and then be able to turn that into your own business, where now you're self-sufficient, you're self-employed, or maybe you're employing other people at that point, that value is coming back to you in huge numbers, right? Like you spend a little bit to gain a lot, and it's almost invaluable. It's just this very hard step to get into. So, what do you think would be, let's say, because obviously, like, going to a workshop in China, that just sounds insanely expensive, right? So let's break it down even maybe more to a local level, as opposed to going out and traveling internationally to do that. If somebody's like, hey, I just got out of, let's say, high school, they just graduated high school, but they want to go into photography, they have next to no money. you said you think the best way would be to volunteer your time.
Right.
So as a professional who does education and mentorship for others now, how is the best way to approach someone like you as a novice and a beginner to try to get in the door and kind of learn from somebody who has that experience?
Yeah, really well said, Justin. Um, one can only learn so much from like just watching on the screen. It's like, it's like traveling. You travel from your living room, like just watch Rick Steve, on,
Hmm.
I'm kind of old school, sorry. Or watch all these like travel blogger on YouTube. It's
Sure.
not the same as you were in that destination. So I would, well, with COVID, it stops, all the
Yeah, that's true.
international travel. But I think at the local level, there's a lot of, if there are like, in-person sort of seminar or like, gathering starting to pop up, then maybe you can like for new photographers or uh, young kids graduate from high school or college, they can start going to those seminars and and talk to the speaker at the end of the function. In fact, I think that's a lot of how we make a lot of connections with the sometimes like we get assistance just from from my students talking to us at
Hmm.
the end of a seminar. And that's in that way you can still make meaningful connection, and it shows that you're serious and you care and you want to offer yourself to help. And once you participate some of these shoots and see how things work, it will change the way how entirely how your thought process planning, and your own shoot while you're shooting as well. So I would just suggest to go to like local meetings,
Hmm.
and if they have some sort of gathering or even like a show or gallery show, if some of the photographers are showing their work, and just pitch yourself as assistant or help,
Right.
to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually how I met Scott. He was actually
Oh,
yeah, he was actually teaching at a so our sponsor for the podcast is the Pixel Connection, their camera store here
right. Oh,
in
wonderful.
Cleveland, and they started doing a festival, or not festival, a conference called Pixel Photo Fest, and Scott was actually teaching at it, and I went to go see uh, his class that he was doing there on wedding photography. And at the
Right.
time I was considering adding weddings in, but I wasn't mainly I was focused on doing modeling and portrait work. But I wanted to kind of start getting into weddings a little bit because there's good money that comes associated with photographing a wedding. So I was interested to see what he had to say. And I like instantly, sitting in the crowd, I could tell that like I would have had a connection with this guy had I just ran into him on the street. Like based off of his personality, his style of shooting, and
Right.
and so I was like, I have to go talk to him after this, and at least give him a business card or get his card,
Mm-hmm.
find out more about his workshops, because I really felt like this is somebody who, he's primarily educating for his living now, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to all the weddings that he's done in the past, but he brings a
Right.
wealth of knowledge with him. So I really wanted to pick his brain a little bit more, which is how I got into the mentorship program with him. But I think that's, like you said, going out to small networking events or, a gallery show is a great idea as well. But I think another key to that is and I've had this happen with me personally, or, I've run into people and seen it happen where people want, they'll come up to you at let's say a networking event and say, "Oh my gosh, I love your work. Would love to shadow you sometime or assist you or something." But then they know, then you don't follow up with it, right? So
Right. Right.
you
Right.
throw
Yeah.
that out, and then you leave it on the other person to reach out to you, or you're expecting them to pay you to come and do this. And if it's somebody who's established, you know, they may not even have the time to consider that or get back to you, or they get asked that so frequently that they may not take it seriously. So I think a key part of it is then to engage with that person again, on social media, follow up via email, and express that you are really interested in doing that and continue to foster a relationship with that person, because that's ultimately going to help you get involved in, I think, build more in, I don't know, maybe not build is probably not the right word, but at least get in contact with that person and just start facilitating that relationship so that you can get involved when they're going on shoots and learn from them. And if you can make that work out where either one, you're getting free education and
Right.
free expertise, or two, they're paying you to come and help, that, I mean, that's the best you could hope for out of it. If you're getting paid to learn, and that, I don't know what's better than that. There's not many scenarios where you're ever going to get that. So if
Yeah.
you can find that, that's huge. But I think it really comes down to connecting with that person at a deeper level, as
Right.
opposed to just coming up to them at a conference where maybe, 50 other people came up to them and said
Exactly.
the same thing.
Yes, yeah, that's the right point, because we do get like a fish bowl worth of business card at the end of a seminar.
Right.
So it's just kind of hard to like keep track. Even like people who came up and take picture or whatnot, or
Mhm.
like ask if they can be help to shadow or assist your shoot. They really have to follow up, or maybe even better, like show up to the next event. That's how
Yeah.
we recognize their faces, and that's how we recognize their name, and we know that they're serious about helping me, and I can help them as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a two-way street. It's not just one way that,
Definitely.
that us as a photographer, we're sourcing free labor. It's not just that. And it's not that the student, that they're just getting free workshop out of it. It's not,
Mhm.
it's definitely a both, an exchange of information. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I actually wanted to get in, since we're kind of on the topic of these conferences and workshops and seminars and stuff. And you're a WPPI master photographer, and you've won tons of awards internationally for your work, which is so incredible. I mean, I think I saw it was like something over 60 plus international awards for your work, which is just insane. But what do you think it actually takes to become an award-winning photographer? And whether that's just locally, regionally, nationally, internationally, I know that there's different levels to that, but where would one start? What is something worth focusing on, so that if you wanted to be known for your work, or have at least acknowledgement that your work is of the highest quality, where do you begin with that, whether it's from just submissions or creating a piece that is worthy of being entered into a contest with the potential to win?
Right. So back in the beginning of my photography journey, sorry, I have to track back because it's like a while ago. And me living in the Bay Area, in the Silicon Valley, like every single I should say every single engineer, like computer science engineer friends that I know, they happen to be a photographer on the weekend.
Mhm.
So they are somewhat shooting wedding suit. I mean, like I can compete with at that time they all already like using like 5D Mark III,
Sure.
like Nikon, I don't know, D900, or the best of the best in the
Mhm.
market gears, like honky big camera that they
Yeah.
show up in events. And I've seen like wedding guests who show up like that. I mean, I personally cannot compete on that kind of gear level.
Mhm.
So, and also trying to figure out my place, how do I make this wedding photography game work for myself, right? And then I think I saw on Scott's blog that he like entered WPPI print competition, and then that's how he started to. Since he won like I think the Coda Awards, and then his picture was published at the back of I think Range Finder magazine,
Rangefinder.
and then Rangefinder, yeah.
Mhm.
So he started marketing himself as a international award-winning photographer, and then I'm like, oh, that's a brilliant idea. Maybe I can do that too. And of course, in the beginning, we all like starting out, our work is not very polished, and then it just takes some time to be very polished level, and we're like kind of like shy for, oh, am I good enough, am I good to submit, or even submit for a competition. And then I kind of start like so my job previously, before I become a system programmer, I was an analyst. So I developed the skill to analyze things before I really like dive into working on it. So I
Sure.
start to analyze like the past winners of WPPI, and then and then look at their work, and also look at their like submitted like print competition work. So there's like a deviation between their normal work versus print, like submitted work on the print competition.
Right.
So I kind of like realized that, oh, you know what, they actually, you know, their everyday, like their wedding work, their portrait work is very different than their competition work. So maybe I just have to like kind of switch to have a mindset just to study what the print competition is about, you know, what they're looking for, like the style of the photography, and maybe like what the past winner style it's going to be like. And then in that way, so I can, you know, shoot for the intention of, okay, these set of pictures, I'm going to like try my best to shoot for maybe competition kind of style. Yeah. Like for a particular competition.
Right.
So you kind of have to like figure out like which competition that you want to submit, and then look at the style and then submit for it. Yeah. Of course, like, yeah.
No, that's okay. That makes sense. I've actually I have never considered that. That, you know, there may be a specific style or a specific type of image that's going to perform better in a competition. I wanted to say contest. That's not the right word. In a competition. So when you're creating for that, now, are you thinking this as you're photographing client work, or are you creating you know, award-winning images based off of like you're fully in control? So when it comes down to the stylization of the shoot, the location of the shoot, are you kind of customizing it, or are you actually using client work when you're going into these competitions?
I would say like 80%. 70%, it's 70 to 80% non-client work.
Okay.
And then maybe the 30% it's client work, because like client work, there's a little control, because you know there's like a schedule you have to follow, and then sometimes, you know, for especially a wedding day, there's like 10 or 15 minutes you have that your private time with you and the bride and groom. So that's like not enough time to produce something amazing, you know, with like proper lighting, unless you get like blessed by God from like, you know, having amazing angel lighting, which is almost never happen, or 1 in a million chance, right? So I would say, like, you know, really you have to have the intention to, okay, I want to set aside time this week to plan a shoot that I can maybe have something to submit for the portrait category, or maybe for the model category, or maybe for like the composite category. So it's like an intention, you know, and then and plus, you know, when it's all control, and like the style, the fashion stylist, the makeup and hair stylist, and then everything is well planned, and you kind of know like what the outlook will be like, you know, you kind of know, and then you, from those stylized shoots, and you choose the best picture, and then and then have it properly retouched and submit for the competition. Yeah. So it's just like so definitely you need to figure out like which competition that it's going to help you to pave your career path. At that time, when I was starting out in early, say like 2011, 2012, like WPPI, it's like, you know, if you like to be a WPPI award-winning photographer, it was kind of like a Google word for a lot of my clients, for like, you know, Asian, especially Asian wedding clients. So they'll be like, okay, she's a WPPI award-winning photographer, I want her. And they know that it's like somewhat kind of like guarantee the quality, you know. Yeah. So I think you just have to figure out, you know, which competition is going to work for you for marketing, or for business sake, or for promoting yourself, get your name out there. Yeah.
Sure. So we've talked a lot about the WPPI, you know, just, I guess, WPPI in general, but are you aware of other competitions that are, you know, potentially good to enter, and maybe even just from a feedback perspective of not necessarily winning and for the accolade, but to just learn from?
Yeah, I think the Junebug Wedding, they run they used to run monthly contests or maybe not. It's like a quarterly contest. But then like they have something called like the best like top 10 wedding photographer or top 10 destination wedding photographer. And then top 50, like so forth. Yeah. So those are really good contests to enter. And because the investment is like relatively low, I think it was like $10 per entry.
Okay.
And then also like at the local level, now that I thought about it, actually the local level is also a good thing to enter competition with PPA because like you get, I think you get cash prize from those local contests too. So why not? You get money out of it, right? And then plus you can use those like ribbon or something to, you know, display in your studio. You know, kind of like Queen's Gambit, you know, right? Yeah, so like that's how she make her name out. So I think that's not a bad thing to, you know, to do that, to follow Queen's Gambit, her own, you know, path, right? Yeah, if she did it, like, you know, we can do it too. But it's just one of those things to like, you know, to use this as a tool to market yourself. Is that like, you know, is that the only tool? It's definitely not the only tool, but it's one of the tools, you know.
Yeah, and it definitely helps. I'm sure you know, eventually I don't think starting small at all is a bad idea. And even if it's just, you know, local in your own city photography contests that potentially could lead to more local clients for you, and then working your way up to those larger, or just going for it. Who knows? Maybe you will win at an award at a larger conference. But, you know, it definitely doesn't hurt to start small and work your way up to those. And then that way you kind of learn the process of it. And that actually kind of makes me, you know, because I've entered a couple contests in the past. I've never done like PPA or WPPI contests. I've done some smaller ones. But I can say from my own personal experience that it can be pretty difficult to feel confident enough in your own work to even go about submitting it. So as somebody who's won a bunch of awards for their work, did you ever, you know, face that sort of self-doubt in your work in your early stages of going to enter these contests? And how did you maybe overcome that so that if somebody is like, oh, my work's not there yet, it's not good enough, it's never going to be good enough, how do you break through and then actually find that confidence in your work?
Yeah, I mean, all the time, I'm still struggling every day. I mean, one day I think, okay, my work is awesome. And then next day it's like, oh my gosh, like, what did I do? This is like SHIT, you know, it's like, yeah, so we're all struggling. It's part of, you know, normal us, you know, being a creative. But I think, you know, one of the, maybe Scott, I mean, I'm sure it was Scott, like he told me that, you know, like, there's nothing to lose. If you enter these competition, maybe you just lose money. You know, that's it, right? You lose some money. And then for, you know, like for all the critique or, you know, like the scores that you receive, nobody's going to see that. You're not going to, like, they're not publishing that, you know. So like, as long as you don't show it on the internet, nobody is going to know it. You don't tell people about you get a score of 79. So, but you take that score of 79 and then like, you know, improve. And maybe next time when you shoot, you know, exactly the same subject. Actually, that's how I did it too. Because it's not like the first time I enter competition, I score like well. So the first time I enter competition, there are multiple prints that I score 79.5. If you know the scoring structure, score of 80 is like an award merit print. So scoring 79.5, you know,
how
like
frustrating.
how frustrating. But it was just like the slightest adjustment that I should have made, which I didn't. I was too rushed to like take that photograph of a model, like she has her hand like kind of like you know, show the back of her hand, which looks like enormous, but if she just like turn like to the side of her hand, that would make the picture a lot more like pleasing. And that's why the judge, you know, while I was watching live judging, like, you know, the judge made the comment that if the photographer took the time to repose the posture of her hand, this will be over 85 versus 79.5. Wow. So may this be the greatest reminder for the photographer to make, like, to slow down and make adjustment of the pose before you take the picture, because it's a portrait. It's not like a photojournalist, you know, it's not photojournalism, or like, you know, it's not a candid moment. It's a pose picture, so you should take your time. So that like just tattoo in my brain that I
Right.
would always remember. So it's one of those things that, like if there's ways that you can participate to watch the live judging or sit through like live judging and see how like the judges make the comments for like prints or pictures to how they can improve. That was like that was like tremendously helpful for myself. And so the next round, when I entered it again and shoot obviously a different subject in a different setting, but I still post like the model a similar way, and I will always remember not to like show the back of her hand. So
Right.
that helps me, even not just like a competition setting. It's for for the rest of my photography journey too. So I think so like if when COVID everything dies down and like the convention started to resume, I highly recommend just to sit through some of those like judging room at WPPI or PPA, or if there's like online platform that you can watch what the comments the judges will give the comments about prints, then it will be super helpful for figuring out how to enter it for the next round and prepare yourself for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like, that criticism that you receive from the judges has almost like been, also become almost invaluable to you, because now it's something, like you said, it's just been burned into your brain. So
Right.
every time you see it now, you're making those adjustments to make that image a little bit better. And while, I mean, I could imagine how frustrating it must be for your first, to get a 79.5 when 80 is, the goal to get to, and you're so close to it and just something that small. But obviously you take that and you learn from it. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, a 79.5 is nothing to scoff at. I mean, it's still, you're competing against
Right.
hundreds of photographers, and they're seeing hundreds of images. And I'm sure as a judge, that also has to get like kind of monotonous and a little bit like you feel like you're seeing a lot of the same stuff. And so, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but the feedback you
Right.
get, if you have these, top tier photographers judging your work, that's worth the investment alone into the contest, I think. I mean, just to
Right.
hear what their
Exactly.
perspective
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and in fact, I think at the end of the judging, and then I actually I went and talked to the judge myself. Yeah, so I
Hmm.
asked him, like what I could do, what more I could do, to make this better. And then he actually was like really nice and kind, and I think he spent like 10 minutes talking about the photo with me
Oh, wow.
privately. Yeah, so that was a Sir. He goes by Sir David Anthony William, by the way. He was like a long judge, a long seasonal judge for WPPI. So I was still very grateful for that,
Hmm.
that he took the time, and it just, but I still, like make an effort to talk to him afterward and not to be shy about, not to be just, like shut down from
Right.
79.5, knowing I could just start calling myself international award winning photographer if I get the 80.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, and that goes, I guess that goes back to what we said about even just kind of seeking out the mentorship from somebody. I mean,
Right.
that was a form of mentorship in a way for you to learn, as a seasoned judge of WPPI, he's seen, I mean, hundreds of thousands, if not, I don't know how
Right.
long he was a judge for, but tons of photographs. And so that's a great resource to also learn from. And maybe with COVID, a lot of these conferences are online, and they may even
Right.
continue into this year being online. So you may not have that opportunity in this year, but it's something to think about at least. And maybe even, I've had some positive experiences of reaching out to photographers and just asking them, people who I think are doing an incredible job at what they do, or a better job than I am, and just asking them, what do you think of this? How could I improve on it? And
Right.
generally speaking, it's social media. It's easy enough to get back to somebody if they're available and and they have the time. A lot of people are just open to doing that.
Right. Exactly.
And it's not a
Yeah.
bad way to reach out and just see. But now, we spent a little bit of time on the award side of things now, which has been great, because I've not actually had an opportunity to talk to anybody about that. And I think that's really valuable to people who want to improve their work. But let's kind of dive into wedding photography a little bit now, because that's really, I think where you shine as the destination wedding photographer. So um, I was looking through your work, and I find and you did touch on this at the beginning, that fashion was a big inspiration for you. But when I looked at your posing of your couples and, the photographs on your Instagram and your website and on Sony's website, the posing has a very high fashion look to it. So my question for you then is, as somebody who may just be getting into photography, let's say they're really struggling with posing couples, and I can see why I struggled with it starting out too, and I'm definitely not posing couples the way you do, so I can learn a thing or two here too as well. But how do you work with your couples to create these very visually impressive images, and create poses that feel natural but still very stylized and high, like high fashion, I guess?
Uh, Justin, I'm totally flattered that you like my work. I guess I really don't think about it too much, but one of the things that I do with my client, like kind of like during established wedding, established meeting, is that, okay, look, this is not just you hiring me, automatically you get good picture. I mean, you're gonna get pretty good picture, but if you wanna get amazing picture, you have to put into work. So I don't care if, maybe I say it nicely, but in my mind,
Right.
I'm thinking, I don't care if you have to, like, I don't know, like lose weight or like get fit or, go train, go to the gym and, and get in shape for the picture. You're gonna pay a lot for these pictures. Might as well just spend a lot of time to invest
Right.
on yourself to look good. And I'm gonna give you like some training. Maybe I'll gather like, say, like maybe like 20 pictures like that serve as like kind of like a mood board, our inspiration board on Pinterest, and then that serve as your inspiration for like poses, for the mood or the look and feel. You and your fiance, you guys can, that would be kind of fun sometimes, just like, take your own picture and practice in front of the camera. In front of the mirror. Yeah. So like, that's gonna help you to become a better subject slash model in front of the camera. So you can look through my website and look at what all these couples do in the past, and maybe you can like try to like replicate that on your spare time. Yeah. So that's what I would suggest them to do. Some really do it. Yeah. Like they would just go on like a rigorous like diet and then lost 20 pounds before the shoot. That's amazing. And then they really practice like, like in front of the mirror before the shoot. So during the shoot, it's a lot more quicker and natural. But in terms of like on the day of the shooting, and you kind of get a sense too, like, not every couple is different. Like some couple, they can pose beautifully. Like, you know it, like, they are very natural.
They're confident.
As soon as, they're confident. As soon as like, okay, so the next moment we want to have you guys started making out. So they'll be like at it, right? But some couple, they're like super shy, but okay, can you guys get closer? They're like still like super far apart. Right. So you kind of have to like kind of figure out who they are, and then just kind of get to like a point to like have a really balanced a balanced picture for them. And I don't push it too much. If they're shy, then I just like, just keep the posing like, should relatively like simple, like hugging or holding hands, or just something that is maybe just like a bit simpler,
like less intimidating.
Exactly. Yeah. Less. But if I get the sense of like, some couples that, okay, she's like already have like 10 pins on like 10 boards on Pinterest, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, on Instagram, she likes all the high fashion clothes, or posts all these brands. And I know she's gonna want to do high fashion posts.
Sure.
Then she will be my ideal subject to like kind of like, okay, so for this next picture, I want you to like cross your right leg to the left, and then like put your
Mm-hmm.
arm on the stair, and lay down and put your like, do
Yeah,
like
very
crazy
dramatic.
pose.
Yeah.
Yeah, very dramatic pose. So, that it's one of those things like, if you feel like that those clients are, up for it, then just go for it. Yeah. But if some of the clients, they're a little bit shy, then just do, I guess, just you kind of tailor and customize based on like their liking and also the
Mm-hmm.
performance as well. Yeah. So
Right, in their comfort zone. Like I mean,
right.
I think that's a big part of. I mean, and I run into it too. I think a lot of times anymore, there's still a fair share of people who get photographs taken. I mean, my family, when I was growing up, they'd always do family photos every couple of years, and we'd go to a photographer and have our photos done. So there's definitely people like that out there. But I also think with the, how easy it is to just take photos on cell phones anymore, that a lot of people have
Right.
just not had that experience. So then when you have somebody taking your photo with a camera, maybe they have lighting equipment in it, or maybe they
Right.
don't, but they have an assistant there, and it just gets to be a lot for
Right.
couples
Right.
or
Right.
even individuals. And so you have to work and gain their confidence and
Exactly.
make
Yeah.
them feel comfortable there. And you definitely, like you said, I mean, if you can tell that your client or the couple that you're going to be working with may not be super comfortable with, doing like I don't know, but like dramatic poses
Right.
or they don't have that body confidence where they want to like show off and kind of like strike these poses, then you may have to go about doing something a little bit simpler for them that will still be as effective. And actually, that's something I tell my second shooters who are still kind of learning wedding photography and couples photography. And actually, just this, I think this rule works for general portrait photography as well too. And if you're just working with everyday people who are hiring you to take their photos, a lot of times these are probably going to be the best photos they've ever seen of themselves, regardless of if the pose is pristine or if it's pretty good, because
Right.
they're used to getting cell phone photos shot of their friends, and then here you are, the professional with an eye and understanding of your equipment, and you can really make them look great, better than you could with just snapping a cell phone photo. So they're going to be impressed already, and then you just kind of work your way into those poses, I guess, and getting more, these elaborate dramatic poses, but they read so well. I mean, some of your photos and obviously the locations you go to are beautiful as well. And the combination of your work with the couple all your couples seem very confident and composed in their images, and it just all comes together very nicely. So yeah, I mean, I think you're creating amazing imagery, and I do see a little bit of Scott in it as well, because I can see that you've learned from him in some of those images. But again, you're traveling, he's traveling too, so you guys are going to these amazing locations, and so maybe there's a little bit of a tie-in there as well.
Yeah. And although I would have actually, now that I remember, so sorry, I should have
That's
mentioned
okay.
this in the beginning of your question, answering your question. Like
Hmm.
I used to keep this massive like sketchbook of like poses that I like from
Oh,
magazines, and I would like just cut them out. Like full, it's like I think $10 for 12 issue nowadays. It's like
yeah.
super cheap. So you should still get them, and because you get like the best of the best ads, like fashion ads, like from Gucci or Dior, like for the poster or lighting or per se, whatever that
Hmm.
you really like, just like cut them out and like cut them in like just like the shape out from that, from the model, and then paste it on the notebook. In that way, that serve as back then that served as my visual reference for
Yeah.
posing. And once I cut so many of them out, and then I will go back and then look at them and use a Sharpie and just like line them, like, okay, so this is like a shape of a V, this is a shape of a circle, this is a shape of or a heart shape or whatnot.
Wow.
So once I do that quite a bit, and then that become like kind of like tattoo in my head. Sorry, I lack of a better words. I keep using the same word. Sorry. So, and then like it's just become your second nature, become, you know, your language when you know how, when you are posing the couple, because you have, you know, if you do have time, just like take your time to pose it until they look awesome, then take the picture. And then also like I started out shooting picture with like shooting the couple with like a lot of natural light, mostly natural light, by the way. And then throughout the day, then when it's necessary, then I take out my flash and LED, and then it's just like kind of like pacing myself up, and then like, you know, just starting out easy and simple and slow, and build up the confidence. And then like once they see a really great picture of themselves and I show them in the back of the screen, then they're like, oh my gosh, okay, that felt weird, but I do look good on the screen. You know, that's what the, you know, sometimes I get feedback from the client saying that. And then, you know, as the day progressed, then once they have the confidence, then, you know, you just get more of a, you know, dramatic lighting, and because they have more, they will be more patient with you as well. Yeah, so I would just suggest to start slow, and then, you know, build up the confidence that way. Yeah, and you
definitely.
maybe bust out like, you know, more like bigger gears, so once they become more comfortable with you.
Yeah, that's actually a great tip. That's something I hadn't considered either, and just kind of easing them into the actual photo shoot.
Easing.
Okay, that's great info. I mean, and that's even stuff that I love the idea of having that book and then figuring out what the shapes are within the image why is it, or what shapes are making this so visually appealing, and breaking it down to something so simple. Because you look at a pose, and then a lot of times I think you can get distracted by little elements in it, and while they are important, I think when you're getting into starting posing, you have to focus on, you know, the elements in it that are going to make it look the best in the easiest way. So seeing, like you said, where is a triangle forming, what are the angles that are forming within the body, is there an S curve, and outlining these things so you can visually see what it should look like, try to communicate that to your couple, or you know, even if it's an individual. And then from there, you can start working on the little details of, you know, the finger placements and where the eyes may be looking, or what, you know, whatever it is. But you can kind of hone in on that as you start to understand the posing and how to coach somebody into that pose a little bit better.
Right. Yeah. It also has to do with the intent too. Like, you know, this is actually one of my favorite book. Sorry, it's in Chinese language, but it's by Christopher Doyle. He's one of the most famous cinematographer in Asia, and he collaborate quite a bit with Wong Kar-wai, and Wong Kar-wai is like one of the best director in Asia, and like for like many like best like foreign film, award-winning film, like In the Mood of Love, Days of Being Wild. Oh, so many. I just couldn't say it. It's just so many. But he mentioned about intent. Like every single image that he said he shot, he has an intention of what he wants to convey. Like, okay, what are we trying to convey? Are we trying to convey like a strong, a powerful image, you know, through her poses, or are we trying to convey like, you know, shyness, or like, you know, serenity? So once you have that concept that you want to convey, everything else will be, you know, the element that contribute, like feeds into this message, or that this intention that you're trying to convey. So I think having an intention when you are, you know, making a photograph, that helps a lot to get the visual language, you know, translate and across, and have it translate into the camera. I think
definitely. Yeah, that's a great tip. We'll make sure to include that book link in the show notes, and I'm not sure, maybe there's a translation version out there for the English speakers, but
I will find that book with the translation, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I'll make sure that we add that in the show notes, and if I can find the translation version, I'll put that in there as well. So I
think it's bilingual. Sorry, so it's perfect. Actually both Chinese and English. Yeah. So
awesome.
Yeah. So
So then, okay, perfect. We'll just add that in there. So I also wanted to ask one more question here, kind of about your business and wedding photography specifically, and then we'll get into some kind of easier, I don't want to say easier, but some more lighthearted, less intensive questions here. But you really do tell some incredible stories with your images. And I was watching a video where I believe you mentioned that you kind of capitalize on a trend of photographing couples in beautiful locations outside of their wedding day, which was something to me that, like, I guess I didn't even realize that was a trend, or, you know, at least in my experience of wedding photography, the people that I've worked with at weddings is all pretty much just on the wedding day alone. So, I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about what that process is like? Is this a separate session that occurs before or after their wedding date, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, so it's actually, for me, from my understanding, it's not a trend. It's been around for ages. I mean, even when my parents were around, like in Asia, it's like,
Hmm.
because for them, seeing each other in the wedding attire is not a taboo in our culture.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So they will have studios that they will go into, take the picture, like say like a week before the wedding day or 2 weeks before the wedding day. But everything was done back in the days, like in the early, say like 70s and 80s, was in studio. But when like Asia, like, you know, many countries in Asia become more like a, you know, a stronger voice in the world, like Korea, Hong Kong, or China, like Japan, many of these like countries have sending people out for traveling, then a lot of these pictures are done like around the world, like versus in like a formal studio per se. So
Uh,
like what they would do, like these people, like these couple, they would just like invest heavily to like buy like a nice, beautiful, massive wedding gown, and then like a tuxedo, and it's like they bring this whole wedding attire packed in the suitcase, and then bring it with them for travel, like a pre-honeymoon. So that's why they call those photo like pre-wedding. So if you can do like keyword search on Instagram or Google, it's been around for a while for these kind of pre-wedding
Interesting.
session, because it's not a taboo. Like, because I know in the States, in US, because seeing each other in the wedding attire before the wedding, so, you know, in the old days, it's like
Hmm.
like a taboo, right?
Right.
But so in that way, they can just have like, you know, like beautiful photograph of them like in this crazy location,
Yeah.
and then on the wedding day they already make like huge prints of themselves, you know, this to
That's
be
awesome.
displayed at the wedding banquet. So like when the guests come in, they can sign it on this like huge, I don't know, like 16 by 20 or
Hmm.
poster size prints of the couple standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. You know, it's one of those things that kind of cool. Like they want to show like the world that, like, you know, they're no longer stuck in their own world, and they're a traveler too. They're a citizen of the world as well. So it's one of those things that I think, me being Asian, and like being,
Hmm.
you know, in my, you know, coming from a past, like, you know, that our culture, it's like known to be like kind of like, okay, you want to suppress your feelings, suppress, you know, don't tell people that, you know, you're traveling, like, you know, you just keep things to yourself, and not telling like people, like not telling people out there how great you are. That kind of culture mentality for our culture, you know, for us being,
Hmm.
you know, in that past, living in that past. But things has been changed, and then once become more like well-rounded and educated in, like, you know, in the West, or educated in the East, like, you know, we travel, becoming global citizen, and we want to showcase that we're part of the world too. So that's why, you know, me as a photographer, and being a woman of yellow color, you know, woman of
Hmm.
yellow, me being Asian, Chinese
Hmm.
American per se, and it's part of my calling to make this pre-wedding session to offer in the US, for American photographers. Maybe they can adapt this new business practice too.
Right.
And so we're not just stuck shooting on the weekend. So we're not
Hmm.
just you know, stuck shooting locally. So we can have this maybe to add it, you know, as part of your business, um, um, to to have more work on weekday as well, because like these pre-wedding session you can shoot any day of the week. It's
Right.
not just confined to be a weekend, and you can shoot off season as well, like just as long as you're able to travel. So that's just my kind of like my calling, and wanting to make this thing known to the West, to photographers here in the US as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the idea of that. I had not heard of it. And I guess I didn't realize that it was more of an Easter thing, but it makes sense. If in the West, it's like you don't see the bride in her dress before the wedding day. But I love the idea of just having, I mean, how it's, as a photographer, I would love to have 2 hours with just the couple on their wedding day to go to locations and take photos with them. But that's never the reality, right? You never have, almost it feels like you never have enough time to do what you actually want to do. You're getting, you get the photos that you need to get, but if you really had an extra 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, you could be creating amazing images, but
Right.
it just doesn't allow for that on a wedding day. So I love the idea of being able to do something before the wedding day, and then they can show it at the wedding, like, I mean, to have a photo of, a bride in her wedding dress at the wedding, that's amazing, but they were in Paris or they were in Milan or wherever. That's so cool. And I wish more people would adopt that mentality here, because I think from a photographer's perspective, I'd almost rather do that than photograph the wedding itself. That's where you're going to get these beautiful images that everyone's going to just love. And I'm sure you're capable of getting it on the wedding day as well. But that is a whole nother level of just having it builds a different connection with the couple too, I'm sure, because you're spending that much more intimate time with them. But you're creating these beautiful images that they're going to be proud of. Their family's going to love to see them. Their friends are going to think they're incredible. And it would just a whole different experience. So that's a very, very cool piece that I didn't even know that was a thing. So that's very cool to learn about.
Yeah. Actually, sometimes I do get like, kind of like nasty comments from like photographers in the East. And they're saying, okay, why do you want to talk about our secrets, our secrets to, to the West? I'm like, it's like Bruce Lee, he shared Kung Fu with the rest of the world, right? Because like the pie is so big, like,
Right.
it's like you cannot possibly to have all that to yourself. So
Right.
might as well just share with the world, and then we all become like elevated, and everybody gets more job. And especially like now during COVID, nobody can travel, right? I mean, like we're basically in our own kind of like like everything become localized, and then wedding become a lot more scaled down. How like, so when we're shooting micro, these like small events, how on top of shooting the actual ceremony part, how do we help the couple to make their pictures amazing, right? So maybe you're shooting micro wedding as an add-on to your package, so because that's what I'm doing right now. And like, for these kind of like highly stylized pre-wedding shoot, that I do them locally, that as my main meat of the package, that comes from like 80% of the revenue. And then the other 20% is like the micro wedding or whatnot. And even if someone books me for a micro wedding, I couldn't stress enough that, they have to like make sure to give me like big chunk of time that I can do these elaborate shoot as part of the micro wedding day. And then give me maybe just like the rest, maybe you do an hour with your micro wedding. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah. So, because in that way, like the quality of the picture is guaranteed to be amazing, Yeah.
Yeah. And for all of the photographers in China who you receive negative feedback from, I would just say it's a much bigger task to convince brides in the United States that it's okay to be seen in your wedding dress before the wedding. So I don't think they have too much to worry about with stealing the secrets over here. But I would love to see that come out a little bit more, because I think that would give photographers a lot more flexibility when it comes to the actual wedding photographs. So Zabrina, I do want to say thank you again so much for sharing this information, because it has been so enlightening. And as a wedding photographer myself, I've been very excited to sit down and talk with you about just your business and how you've kind of developed it and grew into the photographer that you are. So again, I really do appreciate you sitting down and talking with me today. But like I mentioned before that last question, we do have some fun questions that I want to get into with you that we like to ask all of our guests. Nothing super crazy here, but are you ready to get started into that?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. So, your wedding photos that I've seen they feel so exotic to me. Or I guess they're probably the pre-wedding photos, but they feel so exotic to me. And as a top 50 destination wedding photographer, I'm sure that you've been to some very incredible locations. So if you could travel back to any one location, and maybe you will be going back to this location at some point, but if you could travel back to one to photograph pre-wedding portraits there, where's one place that you would like to go back to?
Okay, I definitely want to go back to Morocco because I can go to the desert and gaze at the stars after the work is done.
Wow.
It's really more for myself. I mean, like, the beautiful pictures on top of beautiful pictures, which I'm going to do for my clients. And because last time I went, I feel like the whole thing, it was really rushed. And I did what I could, the best to shoot in a very limited of time. It was crazy, like crazy banana, like 7-day for 5-city kind of schedule. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, and, but I really, really want to go back and just take my time and shoot some more. And plus I can visit all my friends in Spain. So yeah. So Morocco.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I that's not where I would have guessed, but I could see why. It's got to be very beautiful and ornate there. So much interesting architecture and stuff in Morocco.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's say you're heading to a photo, or you're heading to a photo shoot, pre-wedding photo shoot, and the location itself is going to be kind of tight or difficult in terms of like navigating with equipment. So you're going to be limited in terms of what you can actually bring to that photo shoot. So you get one camera, one lens, and one accessory to bring with you. What would you bring?
Okay, I'll bring the Sony A7R4 camera,
Okay.
and one lens, right? You said,
Yeah,
okay.
one lens and one accessory.
I'll bring the 55 or 50, whichever one that I have available at the time. 1.4 or 1.8, whatever is like biggest aperture I can get. An accessory, and I would just bring one flash. Yes, one flash, one off-camera flash. Yes.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I've not actually used the R4. I shoot with the R3 and the and A7 III. But yeah, I get the so I take it you're a prime shooter then?
Yeah, most of the time. But I should zoom too. But I think with prime, and I can just like really slow down and just like focus on the composition and like with that same fixed point of view. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I get that for sure. So I guess not quite building off of it, but I think it kind of may help in this question too, that last answer. So let's a lot of our listeners obviously are transitioning from either a hobbyist or a part-time shooter into becoming a full-time professional photographer. So if someone were interested in getting into wedding photography, how would you recommend they start getting their feet wet in the industry? And are there any must-have pieces of equipment that you would say, getting into wedding photography, you should have this in your kit?
Getting your feet wet, first of all, I think just start assisting other photographers, helping them to be an assistant. Sometimes you don't even need to be a second shooter, just like even being an assistant, you learn so much, and plus that gives a lot less pressure on you to like perform. And then once you feel comfortable, then you start like being their second shooter and shoot for, seriously, I actually still love to be a second shooter for other friends, for my photographer for friends, and because it's like I can do whatever the heck that I want, and then take my sweet time for like the ring or like the kick, and which is like we never have as a main shooter. And just start by assisting and shadowing, getting your feet wet, because in that way you get the real world experience. You're not just learning from by the books or watching YouTube. And that's also maybe like start like just taking your friends and family's portrait and print them out too. And once you have print them out, you see all these flaws in your photograph, and you say, oh my gosh, I should have posed them better, and maybe move to a different wall, that kind of thing. And once things are printed, you just see a lot more about what the picture could be improved. And in terms of, the next part of the question was gears, right?
Yeah. So if there's anything that you'd recommend having in your kit.
Yeah. So like nowadays gears cost a lot less than our old time. So you can just, even like use services like, lens rental or borrowlenses.com, just to start renting lenses that or gears that you feel comfortable with, and then practice using those gears. And of course you do want like one of the best image quality. If it's pay and commission shoot, you should go for the best quality market it's out that you can rent for these gears, and then practice them on your like say if you're shooting on Saturday, maybe you should spend Monday through Friday practice shooting those gears, and then on Saturday exactly how to use them. It'll become your second nature. It become your like body language, like muscle memory. So I for a wedding shooter, you should look for gears that has like great many like great focus points, like the Sony A7. The A7 III, or like the Sony A9. A9, it's a sports line camera, so that's great for capturing ceremony things that happen like in a really fast pace.
Right.
If you're doing things that maybe more of a commercial end that needs to be blow up huge and printed big, or maybe like you need to eventually like crop out just the earring as part of the lookbook, then maybe you should look for the things that has like higher resolution pixel camera, like the A7R series would be wonderful. And then lens wise, it's just like your own preference. It's like if you're covering like ceremony or wedding, from afar, then maybe you get a long lens. If the ceremony is like really small, it's like a 10 people ceremony, you can like zoom in and out. Maybe you'll be fine with just like prime lenses too. So it's hard to say just like one piece of gear,
Yeah, I think you're right. And the rental route is actually a great way to go. And especially if you're getting paid to photograph that wedding, it's not super expensive to rent a lens for a weekend.
No, it's not. Yeah, totally.
And you never know. I mean, it could become your next purchase, or you may be able to create some unique images with it because you don't typically have access to something like that. So it's not a bad idea to rent something every now and again just to try it out and see how it feels.
Yeah, and plus I hate like fumbling with gears on a wedding day. So if I have like a super tight, intense schedule wedding, like maybe like in the ceremony, it's like they have to do like numerous different things on the timeline they have to do. Then I'll just like rent like have two camera, and then one long lens, and then one like zoom lens. Both zoom lenses, and then one long and then one wide. So you cover the various different ranges.
Right. Yeah, so that way you're covered. That's typically how I go about it too, and it's just easier to switch between two cameras as opposed to flipping lenses, and it gets complicated. You can get dust on your sensor. There's just too many more ways it can go wrong, as opposed to if you have two bodies, it's just much more convenient. Now, of course, that can be costly too, but if you're renting, it's a great way to minimize that cost.
Yeah.
Cool. So this next one is the lightning round. I'm just going to throw out a few questions to you. Super easy, nothing too crazy here. So just whatever your go-to is, let's hear it. So Mac or PC?
Mac.
Yep, same here. So we were just talking about lenses here, but if you had to pick one, zooms or primes?
Prime.
Primes. Natural light, off-camera flash, or constant lights?
They're all different. But my preference will still be natural light, off-camera flash, and artificial light. 1, 2, 3.
In that order? Yeah.
But I gotta have all three. Actually, a lot of pictures have like all three things that I actually use in it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I totally understand. Yeah, and I think also, dependent on what your location is too. You may, I think I saw an image where there was a couple standing on the edge of a boat, and where are you going to put, an off-camera flash or an LED panel when they're in the water?
Right. Yeah.
Lightroom or Photoshop for editing?
Both. Can I say both?
Yeah, I guess so. I think you need something
to have
like
both.
Lightroom to get into Photoshop. So I see where you're coming at with both. And then coffee, tea, or neither?
Tea, Earl Grey, and Marco Polo.
Okay, cool. I'm a coffee guy myself. Cool. And then our last fun question here for you. We like to ask every guest this because obviously we're big on education and helping people get to that next level of photography. So do you have any recommended reading materials? I know you did throw out that book earlier, but anything else that you would recommend that people who are wanting to get into photography as a career or wedding photography specifically check out?
To get into photography as a career, maybe I think like your inspiration is like a stream of water. You have like all these different things that feed into that stream and then flows down. So I would recommend like doing things like watching like movie, like all the classics are wonderful, like all the Audrey Hepburn movies they're wonderful, and also like documentaries of photographers too, and then how they become like who they are and how they develop their styles, and then also like books that I highly recommend reading. I don't have one book per se, but then like the director or the cinematographer that I really love is Christopher Doyle, and I will share the link with you guys later. And then also like Wong Kar-wai, and he's like a director, a filmmaker of these like amazing, like highly stylized, like beautifully colored film, and he's like super well known too. And that's like because that helps me to like kind of like find my voice and develop my own style as an Asian American, as someone who like born and raised in China but living in the state. How I develop my own kind of East Coast West style. Obviously I'm not shooting like a very like say like American style, or I'm not shooting just an Asian style, but who I am, I'm like half and half. So, and how just by having these references that helps me develop my sort of I guess style. Yeah. And then and I think you just have to start reading a lot of things, and just sometimes random things that for the things that you like, and then just read more, and that helps you to develop your signature style. Is that am I answering your question?
Yeah, no, you are absolutely. I mean, that's actually I'm actually really excited to check out those books because I've not heard of the authors of them before, but it sounds I think that the cross-cultural element there, where you're saying you're combining your Eastern heritage and your now Western living and trying to find and mold those together, and then taking that from these readings as well. And I find that very interesting and a very unique way to kind of come together and build that style. And I think that reads true with your work too, because you see it in it that you're kind of merging these, some Western elements into these Eastern traditional elements that you're combining. And I think it makes some really very great visual work. So I'd love to check out both of those books and find out a little bit more about I believe you said that they were both directors, or was one a writer?
So Christopher Doyle, he's a cinematographer.
Okay.
And then Wong Kar-wai, he's a director. But they both work together all the time to make these like crazy, like award-winning films. But like I we're in the social media like day and age, is like unavoidable, right? And then sometimes I get so like, oh my gosh, like why is this picture only like 14 likes, where yeah, it's like I feel like it's like I put a lot of blood and soul into it, but now that I thought about it, these one of the greatest artists in the world. They don't even have a social media account, right?
Right.
Why? Because they spend probably, their spare time not to worry about how many likes they get. It just like focus on the work itself. So that's something that I kind of have to constantly remind myself. These amazing, amazing artists out there, they just focus on the work itself. Eventually, through like words of mouth and people that know you, the word will come too. And then and you just have to put yourself out there in like a different way. But social media, it's one of the way, but it's not the only way.
Right. And trust in the process. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Trusting the process and still grinding at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe I've had to work on that too, because for a long time I wanted to build my following on social media. And I finally had to just say, you know what? Followers don't pay the bills. So
So, I actually gave up. I kind of gave up on building my social media following. But I all my other time I spend on like nurturing relationship with magazine editors, nurturing relationship with like people that I know it's gonna help me somewhat put food on the table. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause real quick. This is off the record. I'm going to cut here, but my Mac just gave me I thought it was plugged in, but I think it might have slipped out of the charger.
No worries.
Then I got two more questions for you and we'll be done.
Yeah, no worries.
I was sitting here like, oh, I hope we can. I hope we'll be able to finish this up before. And then I just got the down to 5%, and I was like, well, we'll just cut it there. So we'll still get back into it here. Give me.
No worries.
Let me fix this. Okay. Well, Zabrina, before we wrap up here, in our last segment, we take a few questions from our listeners who submit questions to ask the professionals that I interview on here, so that we can help them reach the next level in their photography. So before we do that, I did want to open it up to you and let you tell our listeners, if they want to find out more about you or follow you on social media, where can they find you at?
Yeah, so they can follow my Instagram. It's Sabrina, ZABRINAXYZ. Yeah,
Perfect.
So that's my Instagram. So I need followers.
As we mentioned, it's like I gave up on it, but
I do need it. Yes. Our constant life struggle as an artist in this day and age, right?
Searching for that validation.
It's more searching for the balance too.
Yes, exactly. If you're listening to this and you have a question that you do want to ask a professional on an upcoming episode, feel free to email them over to social@thepixelconnection.com for a chance to have them answered on the podcast. But today we have a first question here is from a listener named Rob. And he said, I'm finding it hard to stand out in the crowd when there are tons of other people constantly marketing to brides and grooms online. What can I do to separate my wedding work from other photographers?
Okay, that's a great question. I think maybe I've touched that a little bit in one of the answers, in one of the questions before. But like, I think you, as a photographer, to develop your own work per se, then you kind of have to like start to look into who you are as a person, like what your like cultural background, what your neighborhood is like, and then maybe start developing in your own community. So start doing that offline, because for myself, marketing to clients online it's one of the, I guess it was one of the necessary tools in this day and age. But it's my income from, I say, like the clients who found me, it's 50% from word of mouth referrals or the people I photographed before. And then the 50% maybe come from online, and sometimes from newspaper and magazines too. So it's just one of those things you kind of have to just strategize your time, and then try something different if this one thing doesn't work. Yeah. So, Rob, if you're saying, your marketing to bride and groom online doesn't work, then maybe just, start meeting people in your local community. Now that I guess everything is online because of COVID and there's events being canceled, but attend wedding shows and start soliciting couples on your own, just handing out like your business cards. And I used to print my work like on postcard size picture instead of like business card. So when I hand out my card, people will have to see my picture. It's undeniable. Like they have to see it, and then but once they see it, then they start to, they become more curious about who I am as a photographer. Sure. Yeah, and then they start look at my work and then understand who I am. Then eventually they will contact me for a photo shoot. So I would suggest that, just do something different than everybody else is doing, print your work big and then hand them out in a local wedding events or, just make sure everyone in your circle or in your extended circle know that you are a wedding photographer. You are a photographer. And so then like they will think of you when there's event or wedding or portrait shoot come up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. And, something that I did, Rob, is I focused on building in experience around the wedding photography as opposed to it just being about wedding photography. So it's not only just me showing up to their wedding and taking photos. I help them through the process because I would say the majority of couples, this is the first time they're planning a wedding. And as, a professional, you've been through the wedding process. I should say, as becoming a professional, you'll be going through this process a lot more. So you can help guide them through this and make it a little bit easier on them, and maybe take off some of the pressure that they're feeling. And, if especially during COVID, because a lot of my brides that I'm working with right now are stressing out about regulations and mandates and the ever-changing stuff that's happening right now when it comes to putting on their wedding. So just being that person that's there for them and giving them an additional experience is also one way you can kind of separate yourself from the person who's just going out and showing up at the wedding and taking photos at it and then giving them their files. Build it out and make it the focus around them. And I think that will help separate you from just your run-of-the-mill photographer out there.
Yeah, totally.
So we have got one more question for you, Zabrina, and then I'll let you go here. But this one comes from Katie, and she says that I have spent years learning about photography, but I'm really struggling with the business side. What other resources are there for me to learn about how to run a successful photography business? Well, Katie, this is a great place to start, I think. Yes. Listening to the professionals talk about their businesses and how they got there. So you're in the right place to start learning more about the business side of things. Zabrina, do you have any, resources, or I guess, well, maybe I'll just put the thought out there and maybe this is where you'll go with it, because I think this is where I would go, is seek out a mentor. Right. I think that's a huge part of learning about the business side of things and understanding. I think pricing is a very difficult thing to, start figuring out when you're just starting out, and being able to offset the expenses that come with running a business. So I think finding a mentor is a great way too. But do you have anything else that you'd add to that?
I think also like no one person is good at everything. So I think we should have like different mentors for different things too. So like it's not a bad idea to have a business mentor and then like a creative mentor. Yeah. So then you can like have both sides of things to cover. And as for myself, because knowing that like, I didn't give up my decent paying job for nothing. So I have to constantly hustle for business. And for any leads that I know, like, if I hear the slightest sound of, my friend's daughter maybe getting married, then I will start reaching out to them. And then as for my own experience, if I'm able to like get to meet them, that gives me like 80 or 90% chance of booking the wedding, booking the shoot. Yeah. So you kind of just have to fight your way through to find chances to meet with any potential client. There's still people getting married even in the days of COVID, right? So you just have to like make sure to just get yourself out there and schedule meetings even on Zoom. And on Zoom is actually quite good too. And then because you can show your work through like screen sharing, and then once they see yourself on on during conversation and also see the work on screen sharing, then they are more comfortable with you and they know what they're getting at. And then you can cover all the questions that they have answered. So I would just, highly suggest, any leads that you're going to get, just like start meeting with them on Zoom or in person. Yeah.
Yeah. I do. That's something I do too, is I meet with any lead that comes through my website or messages me on social media. I set up a consultation with them pretty much immediately as soon as I can, because I don't want to give them the opportunity to talk to somebody else before they talk to me, but also because you can start establishing that face-to-face relationship. And Zoom has been life-saving for that during COVID, because there's a point where people just weren't, at least in Ohio now, people are a little bit more comfortable with going out and wearing masks and meeting with people. But there was a point back, if you go back a year ago from right now, and even for the next few months from that point, people were not leaving the house, but I was still able to continue meeting with clients and booking weddings because I was using Zoom to do those consultations. So that's a great tip as well. Well, Zabrina, again, thank you so much for joining us today. That is all the questions that I have for you, but I do greatly appreciate your time today. And then one more time, why don't you just go ahead and throw out what your Instagram was so that people can find you?
Oh, thank you, Justin. So my Instagram is Zabrina, Zabrina XYZ on Instagram.
XYZ, perfect.
Zabrina XYZ. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you so much for taking time out to, sit down and talk with me today. And I can't wait to release this episode. I'm so excited to put it out. So thank you again, Zabrina. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Same to you, Justin. Good luck to you.
And now for a little industry news, guys. Canon's EOS R cameras have been a huge hit with the current Canon shooters and brand converts. Canon's basic EF to RF lens converter starts retailing at $99. However, Promaster has announced the release of a Canon EF to RF adapter as well. And get this, guys, their adapter comes in at $59.95. And my friends over at the Pixel Connection, the sponsor of this podcast, took some time to test out this new Promaster lens converter. And let me tell you guys, it sounds like this thing is the real deal. Here's what they had to say about it. The build quality of the Promaster EF to RF adapter is top notch. The adapter is constructed with an all-metal housing and includes a built-in tripod foot that lets you quickly mount it onto a tripod. Better yet, the adapter retains all of the features that make Canon mirrorless, that makes the Canon mirrorless lineup great, including the face and eye detection for both people and animals, and it's compatible with the cameras that feature in-body stabilization. Many times people are wary of buying third-party adapters, but after testing out the Promaster EF to RF adapter with a popular birding lens that many Canon shooters have, the team over at the Pixel Connection gives this adapter 2 thumbs up. So for more information on this release, guys, and details on upcoming releases, head over to thepixelconnection.com and check out their blog and check out their shop while you're at it. They got lots of great deals on all the best equipment. And thank you guys again for tuning into another episode of the Talking Pixels podcast. As always, I'm Justin, and I'll catch you in the next episode.